So not everywhere in Democratic circles, we hear about the blue wave, right? The 2018 blue wave where Democrats are supposed to just crash in and wipe out the Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate and make way for a Democratic president in 2020. However, there is a new disastrous CNN poll which shows that blue wave has actually ended up, or could actually end up being, a little tiny ripple. According to a new poll, CNN poll conducted by SSRS, the Democrats' edge over Republicans is now within the margin of error. So think about that, right? Now, let me give you the numbers first. 47% of registered voters, according to the poll, say that they now back the Democratic candidate in their district, while 44% back Republican voters. The Republican candidate. Voters are also divided evenly over whether the country would be better off with Democrats in control of Congress, 31%, or with the GOP in charge, 30%. So, wait a minute. American people are like, I don't know, like the Republicans, yeah, they suck, but the Democrats are only slightly better. According to this poll, that's disastrous. Now, what's even more telling is what independent voters say. Independent voters, 48%, say it doesn't even matter which party controls Congress. I don't know, we're going to get a shit deal anyway. I mean, yeah, Democrats say, oh, we're going to get a better deal. Well, what's that better deal? Oh, is it the same old establishment stuff that we've been getting before? Not really that much of a better deal. That is awful. Now would be a great time for the Democrats to actually stand up for something, anything. Come on, let's actually put forward some progressive policy as a party and start to champion policy. But no, what are they going to do? They're going to stand for the status quo. Of course, no change, don't rock the boat. No, let's not do that. You know what their entire strategy for defeating Donald Trump is? You're going to love this. Trump is bad. I mean, those guys are terrible. I guess we're a little bit better, but look at those guys. Can you believe those guys vote Democrat? But wait a minute, what are you going to do for us? What makes you different? And look, when you look at the policy substance, there are differences, of course. The Democrats are a lot better than Republicans, but they don't talk about that. And yes, unfortunately right now, Democrats are too far centrist. And so their policies, while better than Republicans, don't actually go the full way to solve the problems that most of the American people are actually feeling, that are actually experiencing. So that's terrible. Now, let's get to more from this poll here. The Democrats' advantage in the generic ballot dipped from 16 points back in February to 6 points in March to just 3 points within the margin of error. So they have seen a 13-point drop in a voting advantage. So in February, people were like fired up, like, yeah, the blue wave, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go. What happened? What did the Democrats do? They decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go more status quo, and we're going to say Trump is bad. Didn't you try that already in 2016? What happened? You got crushed by the Republicans. We had a red wave. Now Republicans control of the presidency, control of the House, control of the Senate, and control of many of the governorships. And the Democrats, they're still holding on to that same failed, disastrous strategy. The other guys are bad. But then we're going to, of course, champion people like Joe Manchin, who vote 61% of the time with Donald Trump. But don't worry, he's a real Democrat because he's got a D next to his name. Oh my God. Now, furthermore, the party's advantage has waned among enthusiastic voters as Republican enthusiasm has grown. Now, there's an explanation for that. It's because Democrats, in their strategy, in their brilliance, have decided to make Trump the central campaign issue. as I said before, Trump is bad. That's what they're running on. Now, the thing about that is the more you say Trump is bad, the more Republicans are going to step up to defend Trump. And that's what's happened. Now, it's not like, because here's why the Democrats are doing this. For one, they get to ignore progressives, right? And continue status quo policies, continue to take corporate money for the most part, aside from a few politicians that have decided not to take corporate PAC money because they're running for president. So they get to continue doing what they've always been doing, champion the status quo, pro-business, etc. And what else do they get to do? They get to not actually solve problems. So that makes it, when they sit there and all they can say is Donald Trump is bad, well, then Republicans, they're going to go and say, well, no, Donald Trump's our guy. He's a Republican. We're going to defend him. This is tribal mentality going on here, right? So what's interesting is that Democrats had attempted, and they keep trying, and they keep trying. I don't know why, but they keep trying. They keep banking on Republicans getting fed up with Donald Trump. But that's not going to happen. They love him because Donald Trump is them. He is Fox News. He is the Fox News audience. Literally. Because that's almost all he watches. So that strategy of picking up disaffected Republicans is not going to work. It's going to backfire. And in trying to go after the so-called moderate Republicans, which is what Hillary Clinton tried to do, they ignore the progressive base. But they do it because they want to ignore progressives. Now, let me give you the numbers on that. About 2/3 of voters, 64%, say they consider Trump to be extremely or very important to their vote for Congress this year. Among enthusiastic voters, he's an even larger factor. 78% consider Trump important to their vote this fall. And the poll suggests that those voters who say the president matters deeply to their vote are more inclined to cast a ballot against him. That is, like I said before, Democrats have made Trump a central issue and have ignored policy. Now, here's the other thing about Trump. The reason that we shouldn't focus so much on him, but focus more on policy, is because Trump is a symptom of bad policy. He's the symptom of the sickness in America. Now, of course, there's racism that definitely feeds into him, xenophobia that definitely feeds into it, the rise of the alt-right. But also there are economic factors, crony capitalism, and you also have voter apathy. To go back to the independents, you have nearly half of all independents and nearly half all the country, to be honest with you, thinking that it doesn't really matter what party is in charge because guess what? They keep getting fucked over by corporations and business and the government either way. But of course, again, we're going to run on Trump. Democrats are focused on him and not on health care, not on wages. And the more you attack Trump, not his policy, the stronger his support will be. So look, Democrats, it's time to hit the panic button. You've got to start talking about policy. Now, there is one good thing in this poll that shows you what exactly you should do. 84% of voters call the economic issues, extremely or very important. So start talking about economic issues. Start talking about raising the minimum wage. Start talking about raising taxes on the rich to end up funding infrastructure, to end up creating jobs and doing economic growth. That is one way you can counter the Republicans' tax cuts, which, by the way, are still deeply unpopular and only go to the rich. So maybe you should talk about how trickle-down economics doesn't work and how all the Republicans want to do is give tax cuts to the rich, where the Democrats, what we want to do is we want to raise taxes on the rich to fund infrastructure. Oh, but I forgot you actually have to stick to that position, which unfortunately the Democrats are unable to do because they don't want to offend their big business friends. It's maddening. It's frustrating. Now, there's another one, healthcare, right? Healthcare policy. Now, 80% of Americans, and this is actually down, but 80% of Americans think it's important to talk about healthcare. Well, why don't we talk about Medicare for all? Why don't we talk about single payer? We could do that. and actually have a conversation on, okay, let's go forward with the ACA. Yes, we managed to protect it somewhat. Right now, Trump continues to sabotage it, and guess what? It's going to get worse. But we have a solution. It's called Medicare for All, which means we take Medicare and we open it up to everybody. You know that program that is incredibly popular for people 65 and older? Yeah, that program, open it up for everybody. But they don't want to do it. They refuse to do it. And so we can't really do better than the Republicans on talking about policy because the Democrats don't have a healthcare policy. Frustrating. Okay, this should be an easy one. Gun policy, right? 76% of voters are calling it extremely or very important to their vote this fall. And that's, of course, thanks to the Parkland kids. There are policies in which 90% of the American people, on background checks, for example, agree with. Run on that at least. Run on those policies. Talk about that policy. Are they going to do that? Well, maybe they will, actually. Because that, as I said, that's an easy one. That's a fucking slam dunk, right? But my point is, people want you to talk about issues. So talk about issues. Let's not just talk about Stormy Daniels 24/7, okay? Let's not do that. Let's actually take time. And yes, the Michael Cohen stuff is kind of important, but you shouldn't be talking about it 9 times out of 10 for your segments. You shouldn't be talking about it all the freaking time. There is news. There's time in the news for other things, and so you should do that. Now, Frank, finally, one more thing in the poll here, right? Majorities of voters on both sides of the aisle say they want their parties to nominate candidates who share their positions on major issues more than wanting candidates who can just beat their counterparts on the other side. Now, this is very important. Republicans and Republican-leading voters feel this way, 76%. Democrats, however, 67% feel that they should nominate candidates who actually share their values. So that's disastrous. It's still a majority, yes. However, only 67% of Democrats are like, no, I want to nominate somebody who actually believes the way that I do. But what about the other people in that? Well, apparently they believe that, well, as long as we get somebody with a D next to their name and beat the Republicans, that's what we want to do. That's more important than anything. That's disastrous. That's how we get people like Heidi Heitkamp and Joe Manchin, who do vote with Trump more than they vote with the Democrats. What's the point of being a Democrat if you're voting with the Republicans? That doesn't make any sense in the world. But again, unfortunately, that's how we get Joe Manchin's, that kind of mentality, and that's the mentality we need to break out of. I mean, look, in West Virginia, we could have had an actual fighter in Paula Jean Swearengin. But unfortunately, too many Democrats fell into the, I'm sorry, we need to vote with somebody who we think can win against a Republican. Instead of voting for somebody who actually represents our values, is looking out for us and not oil companies. Democrats. The lesson from this poll is, if you want to win, you actually need to start talking about the issues facing Americans instead of talking about Trump. And maybe you should actually nominate people who represent you and your issues and your values instead of somebody that you think might be able to beat the Republican in the race. This blue wave, this is the fact that it's probably not going to happen now is the fault of the mainstream Democratic establishment. And if we lose this chance to take the House and the Senate back, it's on them. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.